Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for participating in the Innovations in Sustainable Agriculture Lunchtime webinar. I am Stephanie Newmer, a postdoctoral researcher here at the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. I will be assisting with the behind-the-scenes coordination of this webinar. Feel free to use the chat options to contact me with any questions you may have. I would like to ask each of you to please mute your microphones and turn off your webcams, and only turn them on for speaking. If there are any questions during the presentations, please type them in the chat, and the panelists will then address questions during the question and answer session after all presentations have concluded. This meeting will be recorded and will later be posted on the public ICPRB YouTube page for future viewing. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, please ask for assistance in the chat and I will coordinate with you to resolve them. Again, please be sure to mute your microphones and turn off your webcams. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce Mike Nardelilli, the Executive Director of the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. This event is being held as part of the implementation of the Potomac River Basin Comprehensive Water Resources Plan. This is the fifth in a series of webinars to learn and share information about land use practices for sustainable water resources management. Previous topics have ranged from healthy watershed tools to winter salt management to spring nutrient management and sustainable development. The purpose of this event is to learn and share about innovations in sustainable agriculture in the Potomac Basin. Funding for the planning and execution of this webinar is provided by ICPRB's EPA Section 106 grant under the Clean Water Act. Now, we want to encourage dialogue and information sharing, but if you hear any reference to commercial or trade names, please note that it doesn't indicate an endorsement by ICPRB, the signatories to the compact, or the EPA. Adam McLean will moderate today's panel. Adam McLean is employed as the district manager for the Adams County Conservation District, where he has worked for the past 15 years. He also works part-time at a small water and wastewater plant in the Potomac Basin. He is a Pennsylvania alternate commissioner on the Interstate Commission for the Potomac River Basin and a member of the Potomac River Basin Comprehensive Water Resources Plan Advisory Committee. And he also Pennsylvania Act 220 State Water Plan, Potomac Regional Water Resources Committee. Adam is a lifelong resident of the 10% of the Potomac River Basin that lies within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Adam, to begin the presentations.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. As most of you probably know, innovation in agriculture is essential for many reasons. Innovation is what allows agriculture to feed our growing population and has a major role in keeping farms financially sustainable. But agriculture innovation also plays a very large role in finding new ways to create healthier soils, improve water resources through conservation practices, and we're going to hear about some of those today. I'm not sure that water quality has always been the driving force in agriculture innovation, but here in Adams County, it's been part of the equation for a very, very long time. In 2022, the Adams County Conservation District, we celebrated our 75th year anniversary. And one of the district's earliest conservation annual reports mentions a bus tour that the district provided to the directors of Lexington, Kentucky Conservation District, a group of bankers and other businessmen to observe all the conservation work being done in Adams County. It was noted in that report that the Kentucky district directors expressed considerable amazement. So, conservation has been a big part of agriculture and innovation for a long time. Similar to today's topic, the Adams County Conservation District holds an annual soil quality meeting for our local farmers. 2023 was the 19th consecutive year for that meeting, which draws about 100 and 125 local farmers each year. This day-long meeting provides an opportunity for farmers to share conservation practices that's working for them and some that aren't, and to learn from other experts like our panel today about the importance of soil quality and provide new production practice ideas that they can trial, they can adopt on their own farms, and improve their soil and overall farm operations and water quality. So working for a conservation district in Pennsylvania at the ground level, I get to see or be directly involved with a tremendous amount of agricultural innovation that's happening in the Pennsylvania portion of the Potomac River Basin, which Mike said it's a small part of the river basin, but there's a lot going on up here, and I'm proud to share, if you haven't noticed, that all the panels today are Pennsylvania based, and I've had the pleasure working with all of them. So be prepared for some good information today. So after hearing from our panel today, I think will have more innovative ideas in your toolbox, and be able to answer some questions like, how are we able to put winter cover crop when the current crop isn't harvested yet, or the field conditions don't allow for traditional planting? How are we building new partnerships and finding financial resources that make these innovative projects the future normal? How can we improve farm profitability by looking at the 4 R's? And what are the 4 R's? How can innovation and equipment reduce pesticide necessary in our specialty crops? And with that, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Bill Chain. So he's with Swift Aeroseed LLC. Bill Chain is part owner of Swift Aeroseed LLC, an agricultural drone seeding company specializing in climate resiliency, carbon neutrality, and precision agriculture. He has been a farmer for over 20 years, an educator, and a former senior Pennsylvania agriculture program manager at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. His position required building mutual beneficial relationships within conservation and agriculture sector. Bill's forte is networking with farmers and understanding their production needs. And I've personally seen firsthand Bill's ability to gather information about an agriculture problem and work with farmers and partners to come up with good solutions. So, Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. Very appreciative of being here, and look forward to learning myself here. I'm assuming that I am in fact sharing. Can somebody confirm that for me?
Yes, I can see it, Bill.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm going to start very similar to and follow Adam along the lines of looking at agriculture and understanding, in fact, that agriculture has certainly evolved through the years with many innovations, some good for conservation and maybe some not so good. But I thought about those innovations, and I really could have chosen from thousands to talk about, but in pesticides, I think, are something we're going to talk about today, and hybrid seeds and all kinds of things. Thinking about indigenous populations with the Three Sisters and the idea of corn, beans, and squash. But I honed in on an innovation that occurred a little over 175 years ago, and that was the moldboard plow that John Deere has made famous. That was an innovation back in the day, certainly celebrated, and it did advance agriculture. I don't think that can be taken away from it. One of the important things about that was that it was created with a cast iron steel that was self-cleaning and actually could be pulled through the soil with greater ease by horses and eventually tractors. The plow has stayed with us for a long time. I'm assuming many of us on the call here today are conservationists and recognize maybe some of the damage that the plow's created over time. Here in Pennsylvania, I think it's responsible for much of our legacy sediments that we're trying to work out of our stream beds, but it persists. And I think when we talk about innovations and we look to the future and we work hard in balancing agricultural innovations with not only production but conservation, I think that creates the win that we need in our world today. Just looking at that slide, I've got a couple of different ages of tractors, and the one in the lower left is probably one that could be used right now outside my window. And I taught vocational agriculture for years, so it's hard for me to not bring to attention the cultural spot that the plow plays in really the agricultural community. That's the FFA emblem that's in the right, and if you look to the center, you see that plow as being the center. So it's difficult sometimes to move away from the culture that we have in agriculture, but that's something that my company endeavors to do and create that shift. So over my lifetime, let me tell you, from my experience in being a farmer in the 1980s and 90s up until just recently when I've been working with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and find myself in front of farmers and on farms and working with farmers, I've recognized that there's a real intersection of value in looking at cover crops. And that's where I've honed in on, and that's where my business partners have decided that we think we'd like to improve. So we did create a business, and our business is to recognize the value of cover cropping to accelerate the number of acres that are cover cropped, and not only accelerate the number of acres, but the quality of what the cover crop does and leaves for soil. So I heard Adam mention about the importance of cover cropping and soil health. So I hope to talk about soil health and erosion control and how we're able to, frankly, use new equipment to be able to get that done. First, I'd like to really talk about my team and how important they are. These are my partners. We created a business together called Swift Aeroseed. We each are 1/3 owners. Molly is a great strategist and has been a conservationist and is still with us, but she's got international experience and has really brought a lot of diversity to our thinking. Jay is an aircraft mechanic, and that's become an important skill as we move forward in creating this business that we call Swift Aeroseed. So we started it in 2020 during COVID. We had our problems, as did everybody else in the world, with supply chain issues and getting product and frankly being able to meet together. And I think you'll see that in our slideshow. But our business is we're forging and helping the agricultural population shift to the idea of using an agricultural drone. And I'll say that drones are gaining popularity, not only in the ag sector, but throughout all of industry. But they found a home in agriculture for scouting and picture taking and spraying. And we're hoping to make impact in the idea of seeding with the drone. So our business is all about seeding, cover crops, and providing other ecological services. So the problem, often innovation follows a problem, right? So here in Pennsylvania, we have a little bit shorter growing season. I've noticed a tremendous number of farmers interested in cover cropping to improve their soil. And I know it's part of Pennsylvania's watershed improvement plan to increase the number of acres. So we have something in common with farmers and something that we'd really like to see happen. What farmers need to produce results for soil health is to look at multi-species cover crops. That's so important to increase diversity. Diversity is important for you and I and how we interact with one another, but it's also important in our soil. We just need to walk into a virgin forest to see all the diversity to be able to understand how nature works. In Pennsylvania, it's difficult to get a diverse multi-seed mix started because of the late dates of harvest. Some of those diverse seeds like clover and radish need to be in late August, early September in order to germinate and for the cover crop to be productive. That sort of makes it difficult for grain drills. And then Below you see aircraft. Aircraft are very popular. Eastern Shore, I see them all the time, and of course out in the Midwest. In Pennsylvania, that doesn't work so well. In general, we have smaller fields, and smaller fields don't work well for airplanes. It's not safe, and it's just not practical. So our team started with the idea of creating a drone. You can see some of our earliest work here. It takes a lot to try and be an innovator, and sometimes it's frustrating. It's certainly taken much more time than I ever would have thought. But over COVID, we created our own drone, and then we test different seeders. You can kind of see that on a old deserted runway of an airport. We strapped one of the seeders to a pickup truck and went up and down the runway and got on our hands and knees and counted seeds and the like. But we've moved along, and we have a vision for what we see in the future. And that vision really is there in the left-hand box, and that's corn being harvested, but it's cover crop that's already been established, and it's starting to form a nice mat, protecting that ground, scavenging for nutrients, keeping that soil biome and life ever present. In the upper right is our pledge to customers, recognizing we have two customers, the conservationist and the farmer, and need to work to do that. So our drone seeding service is flexible, it's cost effective, and we're hoping it's efficient. We've been involved in a number of different grants to try and make it so. Here it is. That's the earliest prototype of our grant. It's got some measurements there that we had used to submit to the FAA. It's about 10 feet in diameter if you go wingtip to wingtip, so it's rather large. It can leave the ground at 166 pounds. We tried to get it to be at least a 100-pound payload. We fell a little bit short of that, and we've really worked hard to develop a seeding system, which is what the industry needs. The seeding system is so important on the drone to get it out beyond the wash and down pressure of the propellers. So we think we've perfected that. In fact, we've got a patent. Just this past April, we've put a provisional patent in with the U.S. Patent Office to patent our seed dispersal system. We're getting about a 60-foot width in seed dispersal, and that makes it important for both us and the farmer. For it to be economically viable, it's really important to be able to cover a wide swath. But not only cover that wide swath, we've got to be able to make sure that our seed mix is landing properly, so that we're out there again crawling around doing research, counting in each square foot, making sure that we see evidence of seeds from the seed mix throughout the entire swath, making sure that that works. It's
Bill, I want to give you a 2-minute warning.
Thanks. I'm moving along. This is Adams County, Adams. So here we are over top of soybeans, working on one of those grants to be able to hone in on our skill. This is what it looks like in the upper right. We don't actually steer the drone once it's operating. We operate it, develop a flight path well before it enters the field. The left hand shows us doing research, and you see some buckets out there where we're collecting seeds. This is a video. It's difficult. I got to speak over the noise. Just keep your eye on the center of the screen. It's hard to see the drone when it's at the far end of the field, but you'll see it as it comes back and gets past those trees. So this is what it feels like when it's operating. It's about 20 feet off the ground. This field's been harvested, and this is the only way we could really collect our seeds and do research, but it's on its way, completing that leg. It'll come back and you'll hear it shut off. And it's the seeder is shut off, and now it's going to return to home. Does that automatically. Again, the pilot's not steering it. It's heading back there on its own, and it lands pretty much in its own spot. You could throw a quarter down in the center of where it lands, and it'll come back and hit that spot every time. So we're proud of what we've done. We're doing much more research. We've just, we're submitting Monday a research grant to work on second crop or double crop soybeans. That's the most difficult thing to get a cover crop started, and soybeans, as many of you probably already know, are damaging and can cause real problems with leaving behind nitrogen. So thank you, folks. I'm complete. Done.
Thank you, Bill. And as Bill mentioned, Pennsylvania and all the states in the Chesapeake Bay are looking to increase cover crops and diversity of those cover crops. So Bill gave us a good option, I think, for our toolbox moving forward with those goals. So thank you, Bill. Our next panelist is from Franklin County Conservation District. Caitlin Lucas is the Clean Water Coordinator for Franklin County, better known by the agencies as the Countywide Action Plan or Watershed Implementation Plan Phase 3 Coordinator. This is housed in the Franklin County Conservation District. Originally from Western Pennsylvania, Caitlin graduated in 2017 from Shippensburg University with a degree in Geoenvironmental Studies, a certificate in GIS, and minor in Art and Design and Business. Her independent research at Shippensburg with the Center of Land Use and Sustainability combined with GIS, energy infrastructure, and community planning. She then went to work as a GIS technician for Wetland Consulting Agency in the DC metro area, learning about water science and systems before returning to the area to serve as one of the first 4 pilot county Community Clean Water Action Plan coordinators in Pennsylvania's Countywide Action Plan program in 2022. In this role, she spent 3 years creatively applying her unique combination of study areas and experience to pilot various types of partnerships, strategies, and initiatives, all with the goal of more quickly accomplishing better water quality for our neighbors and partners in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, and the Chesapeake Bay. So Caitlin, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm sharing my screen here with you all. Kind of forgot we were going to have these lovely introductions, so I had a whole thing planned here, but thank you, Adam, for introducing me. As he said, I'm Caitlin Lucas, and I'm the Clean Water Coordinator for Franklin County. Can everybody see my presentation, by the way?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So as Adam mentioned, I'm directly housed in the Conservation District, which is a little unique from my other counterparts. Many of them are located within planning commissions or hired as contractors, but my location of work as a coordinator allows me to work really closely with our landowners and our agricultural specialists. So as Adam said, like I started this position in 2020, brand new. We didn't have these coordinators before. I'm sure in some capacity, but as this official title with this specific countywide action plan, that wasn't a thing, and we were a result of those county plans. And so I started only 4 weeks before that pesky pandemic took the world by storm, and have since rejoined my fellow coworkers in our office and have learned so much about agriculture and stream restoration by full submersion, allowing me to be here with you all today. So with my expertise and background, as Adam mentioned, in GIS planning and stakeholder engagement, I will certainly still never claim to be the ag expert, but I do have a really cool story to share with you guys today. So here we go. So Franklin County is located in South Central PA, known for its agricultural landscape. It sits on the border of Maryland and is made up of mostly 3 main Huck 10 watersheds, which drain to 2 main riversheds. Our largest, highlighted there on the screen in yellow, is the Conococheague watershed. And then also Licking Creek and the West Branch Antietam all drain to the Potomac, which makes up nearly 2/3 of our county's water. Our next largest, this gray area up here, is the Conneaut watershed, and also this small piece here, the Tuscarora, drain to the Susquehanna River. And uniquely, most of Franklin County water originates in Franklin County. So where those two meet are both their headwaters, and they drain outward toward the boundaries of the county. And a lot of it originates from limestone, geologically influenced springs, and travels through our neighboring counties before they reach their main stem rivers. So we take our responsibility of being the headwaters very seriously and work with wonderful people toward cleaner water in Franklin County and beyond every day. I wanted to show this here to show that Franklin County has a total land area of 494,609 acres where it is situated in that larger watershed. Additionally, 60% of the county is zoned ag land, and because of this, it's known for its abundance of fresh produce, though even more competitive for its livestock numbers, next only to Lancaster County. And it has a heavy influence of Pennsylvania Dutch culture, and we have a diverse population of urban, suburban, rural English, as we call our non-plain sect members of the communities, and then also the plain sect communities. Here is a brief look at our CAP goals, our countywide action plan goals. Being in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, we do have nitrogen reduction goals to meet, like the rest of the states in the program. And in Pennsylvania, the state decided that this work would be more effective at a local level and deployed a strategy often referred to as our countywide action plan or our CAP. With these plans, each county has the ability to create their own strategy in combination of BMPs and initiatives. I know other states do it differently. But our initiatives are to help achieve their portion, like our portion for the county of the state's portion of the assigned goals and reductions. In Franklin County, we're aiming to reduce about 1.3 million pounds of nitrogen with our CAP. And while the full plan with the full list of initiatives can be found on our website, the table above does show our comprehensive list of goals specifically for each BMP type. So you can see a bunch here, an estimated cost and estimated reductions for each BMP type. And as you can see, we have quite a bit of our agricultural practices, which is all the yellow versus the blue. This is based on that large proportion of ag land in our landscape. So now we talk about our innovation. In order to increase the use of our BMPs across the county, one of the things that Franklin County Conservation District does, and I'll probably refer to that as FCCD a lot. Annually, we award a Conservation Farmer of the Year, and this awardee is chosen for innovative farming practices that have a positive influence on Franklin County resources, namely soil and water, and show exemplary practices in crop and animal management. And this farmer then hosts the Conservation Farmer of the Year farm tour and shares their practices in real life with other farmers who choose to attend the event. And the event is put on by funding from PACD, Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts. And we get a grant for that each year from them for this adult education event. And it's free for all who wish to attend. And so in 2021, our Farmer of the Year was Lesher Poultry, and the presentation and tour was led by our local poultry farmer, Leslie Bowman of Lesher Poultry. So you can see there a photo on the left of him receiving his award. You can note some awesome GIS maps behind him that he creates. We'll talk about that later. And then also the picture on the right of him sharing his successes and trials and errors all endured while experimenting with some organic cropping. The attendees, which by the way, we usually have about 2 full school buses of, so that's a lot of people. They got bused to his farm, and then they're able to hear about numerous BMPs, including animal waste storage facilities, composting manure, planting green, utilizing cover crops, variable rate manure and nutrient application, grass waterways, diversifying crop rotations, and experimenting with the organic row crops. These are all practices that Lesher Poultry and Leslie use. And in addition, the attendees are also they also learned how BMPs can reduce non-point source pollution and about watershed health and watershed connection. And Leslie also spent time discussing his drone usage on the farm, which is what those maps were for, and how he has spent years kind of building a database of his fields by flying a drone where he's taking his soil samples and takes those samples as the drone is flying. And then based on these trends, he can now fly his drone and just determine what the crop needs by simply looking at the aerial photos. So he has now determined, like, if the fields look a certain way when he flies it, they must be needing this nutrient. And this allows him to give exactly what the crops need rather than any extra, which would end up as runoff. So, however, there is one item in particular I want to showcase today, not only for the innovation for soil health, but also for innovation on farmer and community relations, which I think is very important. So I don't know if you had a guess, but it's sunflowers. So Lesher Poultry is well known for the local farm community for planting one large swath of crop and diversifying from track to track and year to year, rather than diversifying many small crops in one area. And this increases their efficiency as well as a few other benefits. But one of the benefits was a little accidental. One of the crops that Lesher Poultry uses to diversify in their fields is the sunflower. And each year, Lesher Poultry plants one of their farms in nothing but sunflowers, just as they do with their soybeans in one field each year. And each year, the location of the crop changes for soil benefit, but there's always one singular crop at that location. And so each summer, when it's sunflower season, Franklin County gets to experience sunflowers as far as the eye can see. You can see the whole way to that tree line. And we'll talk about those little houses, shacks there in just a moment. So I mentioned that this brought many benefits, one of them accidental, and we'll start with some background on the intentional benefits than the accidental. So in September 2021, Lesher Poultry planted 211 of their total 370 acres in sunflowers. Many might not think of sunflowers as a farmed crop, but you may recognize their harvest on the shelves at the store as black oil sunflower birdseed or sunflower cooking oil. So these 211 acres are home to an astonishing 5.3 million sunflowers. Does that look like 5.3 million sunflowers? Which are widely loved by visitors as far as Virginia, and by the abundance of monarch butterflies and honeybees observed on the property. Planted in these fields are about half an acre of 16 different varieties, which you can see on the screen here, and they leave these paper photos pinned up in one of those little shacks that you saw in the previous photo.
Caitlin, I want to give you a 2-minute warning.
Yep, great. Thank you, Adam. So they have 16 different varieties, and the visitors can pay $1 to pick a sunflower and take them home. And the remaining 210.5 acres are used for the black oil sunflower seed crop. So here we see a picture of sunflower roots, and I just want you to notice that large central root. Typically, Leslie plants his acres in grain and soybeans to feed his poultry operation chickens, but he rotates the sunflowers to diversify the fields. And those benefits regarding soil are that it allows for different root paths to form, which can help prevent soil compaction. Regarding the soil, it minimizes overconsumption for any one nutrient to keep his soil chemistry balanced. And regarding production, it limits his risk of a total crop loss in the event that a particular crop has a low yield season. So here you see the rolling hills of sunflowers and this unintentional benefit. Oh, quickly, I just want to mention this soil health was so important because when we had Hurricane Ida 2 years ago, it rolled through Franklin County, and this is what it looked like after the hurricane. Leslie told me he hardly lost a single sunflower due to the strength of his soil from no-tilling and from this cover crop practice. So this is the unintentional benefit. He shared that other producers have asked him about his methods in the past, and that he's reiterated how important it is to understand the differences of raising sunflowers as part of their rotation. But in his trials, he's become successful with sunflowers, which has significantly been a benefit for the visitors of his fields, monarchs and bees included. But the sunflower fields have acted to bridge the gap between the agricultural community and the rest of the local community by giving something enjoyable to the public. And that is evident by the many visitors they see each year. This is one of the most important benefits of a BMP we can have, in my opinion, as a stakeholder engagement person. This sunflower field is a shining example. Of course, we care about our water and our community, but a big hurdle we have, as you all know, in this work is resources, time, money, and people. And when we have an outlet like this to educate the public and share information in a way that's fun and enjoyable, rather than by debating across the table in the town hall, like we so often do, we can make change happen. So I'm so grateful to Lesher Poultry for this local gem and for sharing our clean water resources in their little sunflower shack for distribution to the public. So you can see all the cars lined up here and our little monarchs enjoying the sunflowers. And I just want to say to stay in the loop on the status of the sunflower fields, their blooming schedule, and to ask questions about using unique crops as cover crops for soil health, and also bridging gaps between the agricultural community, can follow the Sunflower Watch on Facebook. It's called Lesher Poultry Sunflower Watch. You can look it up. And for more information on BMPs like Leslie's, for other operations, if you work with people who are interested in something like this, you can simply contact us or contact them via their Facebook. And thank you all so much for your time. And I hope to see you at the Sunflower Watch this summer.
So thank you, Caitlin. I know the Franklin County Conservation Districts is implementing a lot of agricultural best management practices, and many of them, like you share, are new and innovative. And you guys are working to reduce a lot of sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus getting into the Potomac. So thank you. Just a quick reminder, please put your questions in the chat. Dr. Carlton Wallace will be looking at those later. So if you have any, please put them in the chat. Our next panelist is from Penn State University. So Dr. Long He is Assistant Professor and Extension Specialist at the Department of Agriculture and Biological Engineering at Penn State University. He's located at the Fruit Research Lab Extension Center in Biglerville, Pennsylvania. He received his PhD in mechatronic engineering at Yanshan University in China in 2010. Prior to Penn State, Dr. He was a postdoc scholar and research engineer at Washington State University and University of California, Davis. His research interests are agricultural robotics and precision agricultural technologies for specialty crop productions. So Dr. He, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your introduction. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Long He. I'm going to share my screen here. So is my slides up? Can you see my slides, Adam?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about some of the integrated precision agriculture technologies that we are actually involved, especially for research and extension purpose for specialty crops. So before I get into the projects and then want to introduce about the team, so we have a Penn State Integrated Precision Agriculture program at our department here. So we have 3 faculties. Besides me, we have Dr. Paul Hanneman and Dr. Sharon Samani. And on the right side, those are the grad students working within the team right now. They're working on various different projects. So we also work with a lot of collaborators from different disciplines. And of course, we work a lot with growers as well to find their needs and address the questions they have. So the 2 major things that we're working on for this program is, one is sensor-based crop management and decision making. That means we use remote sensing techniques and algorithms and stuff to actually helping growers to make the right decision and to either saving their cost and also improving the precision of the crop production. So in our study, we have been working on the like precision irrigation, like we're also looking to nutrient management and as well as the pesticide spraying applications, so advanced sprayer technology as well. And the second major part of our research is on the robotic solutions for specialty crop production. So that with the purpose of help addressing the human labor shortage and also trying to improving the crop production field efficiency. So we are talking this kind of work. Those are involving like machine vision system, like a camera and other type of machine vision system, and the robotic system for specific tasks in the field. And the last is you see there's a unmanned ground vehicle. It's kind of small robot there that can transfer in the field autonomously. So it's more like full automation for the system. So in the next step, I'm going to talk a few like projects that we have been working on those two parts. So first one is the sensor-based irrigation for specialty crops. So we have been testing different sensors and different systems that actually can help us to guide the irrigation. The purpose of doing that is more like to reduce the water usage and also precisely apply the water when the plant needed water. So eventually we found that using the soil moisture sensors actually pretty convenient and also very actually a pretty accurate way to test the soil moisture, and then we apply irrigation to the crop. So this you can see from here is some pictures that we're installing some sensors into the orchards. So normally we take 1, 2, 3 foot depths of the ground, and then we put the sensor at different depths. And for those, we can measure the soil moisture at different level of the ground, and then we to help us make decision for irrigation. And the last picture shows a data log box. So we can access the data either remotely or you can go there on site to read the data from some kind of apps. So that'll help us to get information about the soil moisture. And another study we did is to see, because that one is you still kind of just can get the information about soil moisture. And we thought about like how, if we got that information, how we can automate irrigation process. And we did a further study on like put the solenoid valves, like the irrigation valves into the system together. So if we have the soil moisture, once it reaches some certain of thresholds, we can automatically control the valves. Then we can apply the water to the plants. So in the left side, you can see there's a picture showing a box there. That box is actually a data log box, including control of the valves as well. So we use that system collecting the valves and sensors in the field, and then we can apply the water automatically based on the setting. So on the right side, is an interface. So from this interface, you can actually access to your field information remotely at anywhere. So you want to look into your data, soil moisture data in the field. You can open this kind of interface. You can look into the data, and also you can remotely control your valve as well. So you can click the button there that actually control the valves open and close, and also have some historical data showing how your moisture sensor ratings in the field in the past week or months or something like that. So it's very convenient way to look into the sensor data and also help us to apply the water automatically. And then another one is for the precision application is advanced sprayer technology for tree orchard. Of course, this can also be used for other crops as well. I list 2 examples here. On the left side, you can see there's an air plus sprayer actually attached to a tractor. So this air plus sprayer is not just a regular one, but they also have some sensors mounted on that. The sensor is a LiDAR sensor that as you're driving the tractor, the LiDAR sensor working, then it can sense the canopy density. So based on the canopy density, we can control the nozzles each individually to open and close. So it means that you can apply more chemical to the tree when the tree canopy is big, or you apply less when the tree canopy is small, or even you don't need to apply when there is a gap between the tree canopies. And also that in the back of there, we also add another airflow control. It's a Irish damper, kind of. You can control the opening of that Irish damper to control the air get into the sprayer. On that purpose, we're trying to do is to kind of reduce the drift. So if you have the smaller trees, then you don't want to have very strong wind to push that chemical too far. Then you have a lot of drift or waste of chemical. So we can actually by adjust the opening of this bag of the sprayer, then we can control the airflow. So then actually we did test and we found that in this sprayer can actually save more than 50% of chemical. And with this Irish damper system, we can reduce a lot of, like at least 50% of chemical drift into the air as well. So on the right side is showing an autonomous sprayer. So this is just one example. It can be very different way, different kind of designs. But this one is like you don't need to have anybody driving this sprayer. So just the kind of autonomous driving itself. It has GPS, and then you can also set a path, presetting the path that driving through your orchards or your field, and then can spray to the trees. So on that way, so we don't need to necessarily have a operator setting on the sprayer, and this also can do very precisely control as well. And we also look into using the drones like the UAV on see how we can get information from the UAV from the top of the tree canopy, the orchards, and that also some information may help us to do the sprayer control as well. So here's examples. Here you can see the UAV. On the left side is a UAV carry a regular color image, camera. So we just kind of measuring the canopy from the top and see what the kind of the canopy coverage and canopy size and density of at each location, and then we can get a sense of how big of the tree and or sometimes the condition of the trees, and maybe we can get some idea about which part of the orchard is not healthy. We need to have better kind of nutrients management there. So it's helping us to do the crop management there. And also on the right side, there is an NDVI map, is a vegetable like a vegetation index. So we actually using another kind of spectrum camera, put it onto the drone as well to also take the image from top of the orchards. And for this purpose, is more like going to detect the healthy condition of the trees, and those are more like using trying to get if the tree gets some infection even before the symptom shows up. So we're trying to get some information ahead of time as early as possible. So for that, if we can get those information, and then we know we can apply actually planning our spray schedules more precisely. And you can see those are actually we can get into individual tree level. So for each tree canopy, we can see on this side or others or top of the tree or the side of the tree has some kind of disease potential problems there. So it's just a lot of information there, and then follow up with the decision making for us to do the pest management in the orchards.
Dr. He, we have 2 minutes.
Only 2 minutes. Okay. And then I just quickly go through this robotic system that we did. So more like we do a lot of work on the crop node management, and then this one is showing we did some work on the pruning, and this one is do chemical thinning. So we're actually looking to the flower clusters and just to spray the flower clusters as needed. So we save more than 50% or 60% of chemical using this type of sprayer chemical thinning system. And this is a green fruit thinning. We are talking using the robotic system that actually can remove the green fruits that we don't want and keep the big ones in the tree to remaining to grow into the big fruits. And those are some other studies. We did some mushroom, robotic picking mushroom, and also did the autonomous frost protection, and did some work on apple harvesting as well. So those are the kind of research project we have been working on. And here's a few slides that just quickly show the extension activities. We did this one is in the commercial orchards. We installed the irrigation sensors and help growers to apply irrigation more precisely. And those are for the vegetables, and we did some in greenhouse and high tunnels. So it's just kind of help the growers for more like for the irrigation guidance. And also we are also getting some workshops and to demonstrate our technology and our system to the growers and other stakeholders. And here are some examples showing we have some extension talks, extension tours, and then we also have my students and myself demonstrate and present our research work to all the growers and other stakeholders as well. Yeah, I think that's all. This is my group. Thank you so much. I hope that I didn't pass the time.
Thank you, Dr. He. As you shared, precision pesticide has the benefits of economics, better utilizing and reducing product, but also has the environmental water benefits as well. So thank you for sharing your research and some of the technology and innovations that Penn State Extension and Penn State's working on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our next speaker is with Rosetree Consulting. Eric Rosenbaum is a senior agronomist and principal member at Rosetree Consulting LLC. Rosetree Consulting provides integrated pest management, precision agriculture, and nutrient management services to farms in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Eric also serves as the executive director of Pennsylvania 4R Alliance. 4R Nutrient Stewardship Alliance. The Pennsylvania 4R Alliance is a nonprofit organization whose members include ag retailers, government agencies, and environmental organizations. Pennsylvania 4R goal is to advance nutrient sustainability issues within the Chesapeake Bay and beyond. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, the 4R Alliance was really excited to do some work in Adams County, just looking at increasing sustainability of nitrogen fertilizer applications, specifically on corn. And I think I want to start just talking about the water quality from cropland within the Potomac River Basin, as well as the larger Chesapeake Bay Basin, and looking at the nutrient reduction credits that the Bay model calculates on cropland. About 50% of those reductions come from having a nutrient management plan developed on the cropland acres. And the other 50% comes from implementing that nutrient management plan. And to put that into context for people, if I developed a nutrient management plan for this farm here, for this field that we see on the screen, I might say, okay, it's going to get 2 tons of chicken manure. It was corn last year. I'm going to put 100 pounds of ammonium sulfate on as a starter fertilizer, and the nutrient plan is going to calculate how much additional nitrogen fertilizer I would need. And the calculation might say, okay, in order to achieve your yield goal of 200 bushels, you need an additional 100 pounds of nitrogen. And that's where the nutrient management plan stops. But it allows that acre to qualify within our modeling concepts as meeting core nitrogen requirements. And then we get to say, okay, we need to put 100 pounds of nitrogen on in order to meet our yield goal, but how? What product are we going to use? When are we going to apply it? Where are we going to place that product? And that's where kind of 4R nutrient stewardship comes into the picture, right? We're going to take that nutrient management plan and we're going to implement it through looking at the right source of nutrients, the right rate of fertilizers at the right time for maximum uptake, and the right placements so the plants can easily access the fertilizer that we're applying. So this particular project was looking at Adams County farmers and their adoption rates of split nitrogen applications. And split nitrogen applications are looking at taking the total amount of nitrogen that we need to meet our yield goal and dividing it into multiple applications. So if we need to put 100 pounds of nitrogen on to meet our yield goal, are we going to put it all on in one application, or are we going to do it in multiple applications across the year? And we want to advocate for putting that 100 pounds of nitrogen on across multiple applications throughout the year, because that's going to give us our biggest benefit, and it's going to reduce our water quality risk from the fertilizer applications that are occurring. So what we ended up doing is through partnership with Adams County Conservation District, we were able to look at a number of different farms over a 2-year period. And I want to focus on some of the results we got from our first year of the project, 2021, and looking at the 11 farms, almost 2,500 acres that we had enrolled in the project. In order for a farm to participate, they had to be willing to split apply their nitrogen on their cornfields. They had to provide a check strip where we could look at what the yield difference was between applying all of that nitrogen up front before the corn emerged versus split applying that nitrogen across multiple growth stages as the corn grows, and then be able to share some yield data with us. Our goal was, obviously water quality. We want to be able to report these acres as meeting supplemental nitrogen management criteria for rate and time within the Chesapeake Bay model. But we also want to look at making sure that we're looking at farm economics, driving production, and just making sure it's a holistic approach to water quality and farm sustainability. So they had to meet core nitrogen requirements in order to participate. And the one thing that I always like to point out when I talk about this project is this project did not increase nitrogen fertilizer use. So we took their nutrient management plan, we verified the practices that were in the nutrient management plan, and then we talked about how that supplemental fertilizer was going to be applied through varying the timing and the rate of the products used. So we're simply taking that total nitrogen that the nutrient management plan called for and dividing it into multiple applications. And the results were pretty interesting. Let's see if I can move my slide here. So the average yield increase on the 2,500 acres that we had enrolled in 2021 was 17.6 bushels per acre. That's pretty astounding. And the yield increase varied anywhere from 2 bushel to the acre all the way up to 30 bushel to the acre, simply by split applying that nitrogen across multiple applications. It's a fairly simple concept, right? When you think of corn nitrogen uptake through time, corn uses very little nitrogen during early growth stages, right? You put that seed in the ground, it comes out of the ground, it sprouts, it germinates, emerges, and from planting up until about knee high, corn only needs about 30 pounds of nitrogen in order to meet those demands. But from knee high to tassel, it takes about 7 to 8 pounds per acre per day in order to meet demand. So what we really want to look at is timing that nitrogen application right towards that exponential uptake curve and eliminating all of the risk of loss that occurs before that exponential growth phase. So the average yield increase was 17.6 bushel per acre. That's an additional $110 of added revenue per acre. So if we're thinking about economic sustainability of farms, here is a water quality practice that we can advocate for on cropland that has a direct economic benefit to farms, right? They can not increase their nitrogen use at all. Their nitrogen cost stays the same, but we're increasing their total revenue by $110 an acre. We thought that was really high. We did not expect an average yield increase of 17.6 bushels. So we redid the project in 2022, and we did not get 17.6 bushels. We only got about 13 bushels. But still, if you take 13 bushels times the price of corn, we're bumping up against that $90 to $100 acre in revenue increases simply by split applying nitrogen throughout the year on corn. So when Caitlin was talking, she had referenced Lesher Poultry's program that they were using to use aerial imagery to dictate what nutrients to apply on fields. And this is the program that they use. It's a nitrogen modeling program, and we used nitrogen modeling on the farms in Adams County over the past 2 years to kind of monitor what nitrogen was doing in the soil once it was applied and how nitrogen modeling could be used to really fine tune what that supplemental nitrogen rate was. So nitrogen modeling is a concept that some of you may not be familiar with, but what we're looking at doing is we we want to overlay as many different computer layers as possible. And some of those layers are yield data. Some of those layers are aerial imagery, soil types. And then we're going to combine that with the weather that is occurring on your farm, when you're going to plant your corn, what date you're applying manure, how much nitrogen you're putting on at planting. And the model is going to crunch all those numbers and tell you how much nitrogen the plant is taking in at any time. And it's also going to tell you how much nitrogen your soil is losing as the growing season progresses. And so in this slide right here, what it's showing you is we took this one field and we created zones within that field. So we took a large field, this field is maybe 50, 60 acres, and we created smaller zones that you can see outlined in red and yellow. And each of those zones we can assign a different yield goal to based off of their past yield data. So now, instead of having one field with one yield goal and one fertilizer rate, we have one field with 16 different zones and potentially 16 different fertilizer rates to meet the yield that can be achieved in each one of those zones. So the model helps us do that. It helps us create those subfield zones. It helps us create what yield goals can be within those zones. And then it also helps us figure out what nitrogen loss is going to be. And you can kind of see some of that down at the bottom of the page here. We have down here in early June, we put nitrogen on at planting. So the round N represents nitrogen application. The green square represents when it was planted. And then you have nitrogen levels in the soil between planting and when side dressing occurred. When side dressing occurred, the nitrogen level shot up. And as that plant went through its exponential growth phase, the nitrogen levels were depleted out of the soil as the plant took that in. We also have all the rainfall events here along the bottom, so you can kind of see where rain is happening and how that is affecting crop uptake. Nitrogen models are great for that. And up here in the upper left-hand corner, it's going to tell us how much nitrogen we need to apply to meet our yield goal. So if we had a 160 bushel yield goal, we applied 123 pounds of nitrogen total, and it's telling us that we're negative 47 on nitrogen, and on my screen that is covered up. Or projected deficit, negative 47. It's telling us we need to apply an additional 47 pounds in order to meet our yield goal. So that's something that the model does, but it's taking into consideration any kind of soybean residual that we had. It's taking into consideration any kind of cover crops, any kind of manure applications. We can go in and take a soil nitrate test at the beginning of the model in order to recalibrate it. And we actually did that in this field. And the recalibration is fairly interesting to look at. If I can move my my slide here. There we go. So this is just kind of a blown up version of what we had looked at earlier, where it shows uptake, rainfall, all of our nitrogen applications here. And I think if I go to the next slide, voila.
I want to give you a 2-minute warning.
Thank you. This is looking at nitrogen performance and how your nitrogen reacted throughout the year. So blue line right here, crop uptake, right? This is what corn looks like. Not a whole lot of uptake early in the year, exponential growth, exponential uptake. Here is soil nitrogen levels through time. We put a little bit of nitrogen on at planting, got a boost. We had mineralization through June, add a little bit of nitrogen to the system. As the corn starts to go through its exponential growth phase, it's drawing nitrogen down. Here's our side dress application or our split application, and continued drawdown through the year. All right, so that's fairly interesting. What's also interesting is look at this leaching, right? This is telling us, modeling how nitrogen is leaving our soil system. So leaching losses were fairly stagnant, did not change throughout the year. Here in May, we had about 35 pounds of leaching loss. So there was already 35 pounds of nitrogen lost from this system before any corn was planted, before any nitrogen fertilizer was applied. This is nitrogen loss that's occurring from past applications, mineralization of organic matter from previous years, nitrogen that's just naturally sitting in the soil. It's not fertilizer loss, but it's fairly consistent. So with the practices that this farmer was doing, his practices were not leading to any additional leaching losses because he put a giant amount of nitrogen on right here, but because he had a stabilizer with that nitrogen, we did not see an increase in leaching loss from that application. Same thing with volatilization. Volatilization is this purple line down here. We had two nitrogen applications, a stabilizer with both. This nitrogen application was placed below the soil surface. This nitrogen application had a stabilizer product preventing volatilization loss, and volatilization losses throughout the year were calculated to be very low. So that makes a lot of sense. Mineralization, how the soil is mineralizing nitrogen from organic matter, is also calculated because we take a soil test and we know what the mineral or what the organic matter levels of that soil are. We know what the contributions of organic matter are going to be through time. So that's kind of how a model works. It allows us to sit back at the end of the year and talk to farmers and say, look, right now, your biggest nitrogen risk is leaching in early spring. Here are some practices that we can do to reduce nitrogen leaching in early spring. Here's some confirmation that your nitrogen stabilizer products that you're using are effective in reducing leaching and volatilization losses because we're not picking it up in the model. And the model is showing adequate nitrogen levels in the corn as time goes by. So those are all things that models can help us with. Split applications of nitrogen and combined with modeling. Our take-home message for organizations working within watersheds, when we're looking in that in-field space where we want farmers to reduce nitrogen losses, is that split applications, number one, are going to increase farm income. So any practice that we can talk to farmers about that's going to increase farm income is going to be an easier sell for us in increasing adoption rates throughout the watershed. The split applications are reducing the nitrogen rates below land-grant university recommendations. So that means we can calculate them for supplemental nitrogen within the Bay model. We're increasing nutrient use efficiency. We're reducing overall fertilizer use. But these practices work best when they're paired with other fertilizer BMPs, right? So we definitely want farmers using nitrogen stabilizers. We definitely want farmers looking into doing some of the modeling practices like I showed you here and like Lesher Poultry is doing. And we definitely want farmers looking into variable rate applications to manage that subfield variability that occurs in pretty much every field in the watershed. The other part that we'd be remiss if we didn't point out is if we're increasing yield by an average of 17 bushels per acre from a nitrogen BMP, it's also having a fertilizer or a phosphorus impact as well. If we're increasing yield by 17 bushels, I increased phosphorus removal by almost 9 pounds per acre simply by split applying my nitrogen. So we do want people to be aware of that. So that's what the 4R Alliance has been working on. We're really thankful to Adams County for the ability to work with farmers in the county. And Adam, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Eric. As Eric said, we did get a grant to work with him and his company to trial this out, and the split application and adaptive management, we saw both nutrient reductions, we saw better utilization of nutrients. We also showed, as Eric said, direct economic benefits. So that's great. So I do want to thank all of our panelists today for sharing these interesting innovations in agriculture. So the next part, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Carlington Wallace for the question and answer portion of the webinar. Dr. Wallace is Associate Director of Water Resources for the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, and he will be asking the panelists questions that you have put into the chat. So if you haven't put any in the chat, please do so. Give Dr. Wallace some questions to read to our panelists. Dr. Wallace, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Love the presentations by our panelists, I'll say. So the first question goes to Eric. So, I just want to make a comment that, nutrient management trumps all other conservation practices when it comes on to managing nutrient loss, right? And so, so this research that you're doing is absolutely, wonderful. You mentioned though a lot about corn, so I was just wondering, have there been similar studies in soybean fields, or because, and the reason is in most states, especially in the Midwest, there is kind of a rotation basis with corn this year, soybean next year, and so on. So how would soybean then, for example, impact the nitrogen uptake, or
Sure, great question.
yeah. Mhm.
So soybeans have a demand for nitrogen that is equal to corn, where if you were going to grow 200 bushel corn, you would require 200 pounds of nitrogen. If you were to grow 70 bushel soybeans, you would require 200 pounds of nitrogen. It's just that the soybeans are thought to be producing that nitrogen by themselves, and they really don't. They grab nitrogen from the soil. They do produce some of it through biological nodules on their root systems. But the biggest thing that we've seen with soybeans over the past 20 years is that the genetics of soybeans has gotten so good at cannibalizing themselves and turning any kind of carbohydrate that soybean can produce through the growing season, turning that into grain. Back in 30, 40 years ago, a soybean plant could probably only convert about 75% of total carbohydrate into grain. Today, our varieties are converting about 90% of carbohydrate into grain, which means that the amount of nitrogen left in the soybean residue is probably not what we think it is. But what we found within this study, particularly in our Adams County participants, the majority of the cornfields that we were looking at was corn that was rotated after soybeans. So we would have expected soybean legume contributions to the corn fertility, and we were expecting that. What we weren't expecting is that in almost every situation where we had soybeans being rotated into corn, the amount of nitrogen that was leached out of the system in early spring was tremendous. The slide that I had shown up here estimated about a 35-pound leaching loss in early spring from a soybean field before it was planted into corn. I think the average out of all the fields we had enrolled in the project in 2022, the average was 50. We had 50 pounds of leaching loss in Adams County soils before the corn was ever planted. And all that nitrogen was residual from the soybean crop. So I think Bill's ears will probably be perking up because that particular nitrogen loss pathway can very much be addressed through cover crop applications.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is for Bill Shane. So Eric had asked the question in the chat about how does wind and weather affect your ability to fly or disperse seeds across, 60-inch, pattern width. I see where you have addressed the question in the chat. Would you like to add anything just so that the wider audience would have a better understanding of that?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a great question, and it's a matter of physics. So one of the challenges in doing the drone seeding and looking to try and do more multi-species mix seeding is that we have seeds basically that are all different sizes, mostly on the small side. And I'll just give you an example of a mix. We generally go with an annual ryegrass, making up at least 50% of the mix. But then in addition, there'll be radish and clover, perhaps rape or mustard or other flax or even hairy vetch added to that. The seeds that are round are excellent as far as being thrown with our seeder and making that 60-foot broadcast pattern. The ryegrass is where we had the most trouble. It's a feathery seed. And what we're doing is working with the seed industry to coat that seed in order to increase its mass to be able to fly. So that's the first answer. The second answer is that we can very quickly change the flight path of how we've mapped out the field. Just simply, it's a matter of software, and it's just so neat. But you just can change down and back to side, to go with the wind, so that you're never flying into a direct crosswind. And then third, I said that we do ground ourselves, or we basically make a no-fly decision. On most days, it starts out calm. Winds generally increase by 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and maybe consistent right till 5 p.m. and then die down in the evening. So we take advantage of that, and there have been times, even just doing our research, where we've had to simply ground ourselves and sit and wait for the wind to stop.
Awesome. All right, thank you. I think we're at time really, but there's a couple quick questions I would like to get in, and one for Dr. He and one for Caitlin. I'll read the Dr. He question first, and that is, how quickly do you think commercial orchards will adopt these technologies as a tool for reducing labor needs and pesticide needs?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So actually, I want to separate the pesticide needs and label needs in terms of timing. For the pesticide need, the presentation I gave, like there's sprayers and technology has been already applied, and also there's still improving. So I should see to improve your pesticide efficiency or reduce the pesticide usage is already there. So something we can actually use, and still some improvements on like monitoring and other kind of more site-specific application is still in the research, and I should see this one is pretty close. So for reducing labor needs is more like using the robotics or other kind of automation. So for robotics, it's always kind of a lot of long term. So I should see a lot of times we need to look into one, like about at least 5 to 10 years. And the thing that we are working on also, it's just right now is more like research prototypes. And then the next step, a lot of things need to go to commercial manufacturing and a lot of field testing and improving. So yeah, 5-10 years is a pretty kind of timeline for those robotic things for reducing labor needs. But
All right,
for
thank you.
yeah, okay, that's fine. So yeah, for the automation for
I was
irrigation, yeah,
Go ahead.
just for like, for example, for automation for irrigation, I also reduce labor needs, but it could be much easier compared to robotics for other things. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna ask, do you have any video demonstration that participants could look at for those who are interested in that? This is a very neat innovation, and I would definitely love to look at some demonstration videos.
Sure, I can share some videos later if you can give me some links. I can write, or I can share some links.
Sure. You can forward it to Heidi or Stephanie.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a final question, for Caitlin, as she wraps up this webinar session, is we'd love to know more about the Sunflower Watch. Is this an annual thing for Pennsylvania or for Franklin County? And what timeline? I know there is a short window for which people can go and view these sunflower farms. When would you say is the best time for us to come to Pennsylvania and have a great time?
Hi, so I am in fact looking up their Facebook for you right now, so I can post a link in the chat. The Sunflower Watch happens every summer. Typically, they're in their best bloom around Labor Day weekend, actually. So there is, I believe they plant them in like June or July, and then they are at their peak around August. And something I just wanted to mention earlier, I was trying to make sure I stayed on time, but one of the main things for the sunflower field that I found most interesting was when we had the hurricane, based on his his no-till practices and the rotation that he uses with the sunflowers, his fields were able to absorb 3.17 inches of rain in approximately 24 hours and had nearly no runoff, no gullies, and didn't lose more than maybe 1 or 2 sunflowers in the whole storm. So I just felt that was the point of talking about today of why it was such an innovation, and skipped over that part. So I felt I needed to share that. So thanks for asking that question. They will come up this summer, and the best weekend typically to see them is Labor Day weekend. On the Sunflower Watch Facebook page, they do post a little kind of like a graph where they show the anticipated peak bloom date, and then a graph of how many are bloomed at the moment percentage wise and unbloomed. And then they start to then show you what they call quote unquote over the hill, meaning the sunflowers are now past their peak date and starting to die off, and they will getting closer to harvest time, and they will show that as well. So maybe there's 80% remaining, 20 are over the hill, that kind of thing. And they keep those updates on their Facebook as well as photos.
Awesome. That's yeah, we'll definitely be looking out for that this year as people think of ideas for summer travels and so on. And so with that, I would like to conclude today's webinar by thanking our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedule to share with us. And also a special thank you to Adam McLean, who moderated today's session. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you all at our next quarterly webinar. So with that, I'd like to thank you again and conclude today's webinar session.